Thank you so much, everybody. It's good to be here. Do you like sunny Copenhagen? It must be some kind of comfort to you guys if you are not, familiar with the Danish weather. That even locals like me are not capable of bringing proper clothes in a rainy day like this. So I'm a bit, wet pants, but I think we will manage. Yeah. Thank you so much for inviting me. It's a great pleasure. I think I should start with a little disclaimer here, because actually I'm not a journalist covering environmental stuff or climate change as everyday business for me. I'm an investigative journalist and working with all sorts of investigations, banking scandals, as well as this project that we did last year, which is a story that we called A Large Part of Denmark is Dying. That's the English title. It was a story that I think you could say that normally when you work with big stories, investigations, you have some kind of idea whether it will be a huge scandal or something that people really will talk about for weeks and weeks, or whether it will be just a small, story that people cannot really relate to or will find some kind of, uninteresting and unimportant and difficult for them to relate to. And I must admit that this story, when we started it, I was pretty sure that it would end up in the last category, as something that my bosses would say, well, it took a lot of time, it cost a lot of money, and the output was, not really worth it. But luckily, I was not right. That was not true. It was a huge success for Berlingske. It was a major story for us when we broke it in September last year. Tens of thousands of people were watching the digital story, and more importantly, it really gained the attention of a lot of people. It was talk of town for weeks, and also had some kind of impact on not only the public debate, but also the whole political discourse among our most powerful politicians. So it was really an eye-opener to me, and a positive surprise that this was one of the stories, one of the biggest stories actually for Berlingske last year. I think that some of the reasons for the story's success was something like this. You are now officially in the home country of the Vikings. You can even see the fishes. They look a bit sad underneath this picture. But we are a nation, basically, of people that are very well connected to the ocean. It means a lot to us. It's deeply rooted in the Danish culture. No matter where you live in Denmark, you are never more than an hour away from the nearest beach. So I think that we hit a nerve in the Danish culture, heritage, tradition, what you will name it. We've always been the first settlers in Denmark were fishermen living in the coastal areas. We were proud seafarers, conquering the oceans for centuries, and even today we make billions from fishing and from coastal tourism, especially in Jutland. We have all these wonderful beaches over there. Some of you might have seen. So I think that's the reason for this story's success, is that we're actually really hitting a nerve here that meant something that people, average Danish people, actually value. And that was one of the lessons we learned here. So this is the issue we're talking about, and it sounds very boring and technical, and I'm sure a lot of you guys know a lot more about it than I do, but it's called oxygen depletion, also known as hypoxia by some. And the short, easy version is that this is a phenomenon that occurs when the water is polluted with nutrients, mostly from farming and sewage, in nitrogen and phosphorus that are running out in the sea, in the water. These nutrients lead to rise in algae and plankton. The algae steal the sunlight, suffocate the plants, and when they die, the decay process takes up oxygen from the water. The process is also fueled by the rising sea temperatures as a consequence of climate change, of course. And the results, the plants and the animals are suffocated. It's not a new phenomenon in Denmark. We've been talking about this for decades, actually. But this is the way we've been talking about it, mostly. And I think that's the reason why it never, gained the public attention for real, because mostly we've been showing maps and figures and data and statistics. And of course, it looks impressive, but I'm afraid stuff like this doesn't get into the stomach of people. This doesn't really touch a nerve in people. So basically, not a new phenomenon. And I think the reason is that we've been trying to communicate this in a very scientific and perhaps technical, boring way. Until one of my colleagues, Asger, who now arrived. Hi, Asger. One of the masterminds behind the project, and you can ask him a lot of questions afterwards. But Asger heard a program with an interview with a biologist who claimed that actually this was still a major problem. In fact, a sea area the size of the island Funen here in red was actually dead, not just suffering, but literally dead. And no one was really talking about it. And we had a bit of a laugh, because what if it was a forest above sea level? We can imagine the public outcry, the panic if people were seeing this when they were visiting their nearest forest. So there would be, public debates and demands of politicians reacting. But since this was below water, no one really noticed. No one, except from a few biologists and divers, no one ever saw the consequences of oxygen depletion. So we went to see for ourselves. Asger, skilled diver, took on his swimsuit, and together with our colleague Matthias, who's a very skilled drone photographer and flyer, we asked our bosses for permission to travel around the country throughout a year. And when you go and ask your bosses that kind of question, they normally say, no, please don't do that. That will take far too long. But in this case, they actually agreed and said that was okay. And it was not, we didn't work full time throughout a year, but now and then we had these trips around the country. These were some of the places that we visited in order to dive and to see for ourselves how it was, how the results, the consequences were looking like when we were diving. You can see all the fjords in Jutland, especially we have a lot of fjords here in the eastern part of Jutland that are very sensitive to oxygen depletion, but also near Copenhagen. Not only did we dive, we also visited and interviewed a lot of people who are working with the water, working with the sea, and have their own experiences, such as fishermen. We visited a sailing club for kids in northern Jutland. We visited biologists and, also farmers who have a large role to play in this whole story. And before I show you some of the results of our diving trips, I'd just like to show you a picture of how a healthy ocean should look like. We have all the seagrass in the floor here. Seagrass is no, not seagrass. Eelgrass is a plant that is very, extremely important for the marine environment, because this is like nurseries for fish and various creatures living in the ocean. We have a seabed with sand instead of mud. We have clean water. We have a lack of algae. So this is a healthy ocean floor. And I'm going to show you a few of the pictures that Asger took when we were diving. And I'm not going to say so much, because actually I think that they kind of speak for themselves. So, yeah. You can see the algae here. And these white layers, we call them lilan in Danish. It's sulfur. It's a very distinct sign of lack of oxygen. And this was one of the last places we visited. And it has not been photoshopped, this photo. It was actually brown. And I remember Asger, I think you were diving for about an hour and you were sick for a whole week afterwards because this is toxic algae. It's and that was where all the kids were learning how to sail on the surface. So no matter where we were diving, no matter what part of the Danish oceans we were visiting, we saw these very, very clear signs of oxygen depletion, a complete lack of life. And this was the front page of our newspaper when we brought the first story, and had a lot of pictures and actually more pictures than words, because it was so illustrative, we thought. We called it dødvande, which is a Danish expression for, I think you could call it deadlock or stalemate or something like that. And it was very, not only illustrative of what we actually found in the water, but also about the whole political situation we have been talking about oxygen depletion for decades. Still, this was the site that met us when we went in to see for ourselves. Yeah, so not only was, and I'll give you the link to the whole digital story with a lot of pictures where you can see for yourself afterwards, because we have, of course, a lot more material than what I just showed you here. But part of the project was to show the consequences of oxygen depletion, but also to, of course, explain to our readers why is that occurring, what's the reason for this, and this is the situation, this is what we're up against, because Denmark is not only a nation of proud seafarers and fishermen, we're also a nation of very proud farmers. And there's no doubt that the farming community is very, for decades, had been very in opposition to the whole story of them having a responsibility for this. 48% of Danes believe that the primary causes of oxygen depletion is pollution from cities and industry and overflow of wastewater, which is, of course, a total lie. This is the main reason. Not this particular pig, but pigs like this. So we spend a lot of time and energy in also doing stories about the whole role of the agriculture. The whole blue area here is the part of the nitrogen in the aquatic that stems from agriculture. And as you can see, the sewage and wastewater is only the tiny, tiny, tiny bits in the top. So we were up against a major misunderstanding in the whole public debate about what really causes oxygen depletion. So we spend a lot of energy in not only in our major digital story when we publish that one, but also in the follow-up stories to describe this issue to our readers. Yeah. It had a lot of consequences, as I said in the beginning. We were a bit surprised with how this really conquered the public agenda, and we're getting real impact. The Danish Prime Minister called the pictures terrifying in her opening speech in the Parliament. The farmers' organization, that's really not normal in Denmark, went out and said, yes, we do have some kind of responsibility for this. We cannot hide anymore, which was actually a big thing. And the Parliament agreed to a huge emergency package for the aquatic environment. And this summer, actually, we had this huge package where, I'm not saying this was because of our story, but it definitely played a part in the whole debate leading up to this political reform of Denmark, which should lead to less agriculture and more nature. So, really impactful story. And what did we learn from it? Yeah, I think that it's not rocket science, but it's good to remind yourself that, sometimes you should not be afraid of doing the complicated stuff if the issue is important enough and if you are able to tell it in an interesting way. I was pretty amazed that people would not only really find the first story with all the pictures interesting, but also all the follow-up stories with the technical issues and all the very, very scientific description of what was causing this. This was really something that people would like to know about and read and discuss. And of course, all the stuff about fake news, just be factual and don't get emotional. Be factual and insist on the science, and also be open to. I know that my third point. It doesn't make much sense because fake news obviously is fake. But what we thought was not a good argument. Seemed some of the arguments of the farming side was actually fair enough and was important to discuss, such as the share of nitrogen coming from our neighboring countries was actually, it is an important thing to put into the debate. So be open to every argument, and remember that the other side might have some points now and then. And of course, the good old saying, show it, don't tell it. It just still rules. This was a story that, first of all, was a visual project. And I think that was probably the reason for its success for us. So yeah, that was my final words on Død Vande, as we call it. Thank you so much for listening. This is the... This is the link to the digital story, and it's not behind a paywall, so you should all be able to go and visit it if you feel like. Any questions?
Hello, thank you, Michael. My name is Robert. I'm from a non-profit media organization called Imagine 5 that does constructive climate storytelling. Thank you for the presentation. I think this story was, really, really cool, really impactful story. And to me, it's one that kind of says a lot about the way that I think Denmark sees itself and the sort of stories and myths, I suppose, that people in Denmark tell about themselves and about the country. I say this as a foreigner living here, so if I got it wrong, then you can tell me. But you mentioned a country of proud seafarers, country of proud farmers, a country that sees itself as being very green, and the story that you have here really challenges some of those things and puts them into a whole new perspective, which I think is partly why it's so important. And I wondered to what extent you kind of had that in mind when you were working, and whether that was something that you thought about and sort of worked with the idea of trying to build a sort of new narrative about what Denmark is and what it does in the world and who we are and what the role of farmers is, and how we can contribute to a better world. Did you have that sort of bigger picture in mind of sort of creating, I don't know, a new sort of contributing to a better national story?
Thank you. It's a very interesting question because agriculture is so deeply rooted in the Danish culture that I don't think that many people actually understand how damaging it is to the environment. I think that when we look at a cornfield, we see nature. But have you ever been in the middle of a cornfield and been looking down? You see absolutely no sign of nature. There's no animals, there's no other plants. It's just the corn that's growing there. So we were up against some powerful sources and also a very powerful story. And I don't think that we've changed much, but I'm pretty sure that now it's at least it's part of the public debate that agriculture is actually something that we have to ask questions about, because we cannot keep on going like this. We're killing the fjords, we're killing the seas, and also the fjords are very sensitive. So we were two very powerful stories about our Danish national understanding, the Danish culture. We're clashing here: the farmers and the seafarers, or the ocean loving part of our culture. So yeah, we were very aware of it, but we had a lot of discussions with farmers. We went to visit them, as you can see in the digital story. We also one of the farmers, very very conservative farmer, is actually appearing in our story, agreeing to participate, and letting him come with his explanations as to why this is. And I think that openness we showed them, we invited them inside the story, actually was something they were very they were really satisfied with that part of it, because we could have their arguments, we could bring them, to the public and let them answer, and then the scientists just say, well, yeah, you might say it's sewage, but that's crap. It's not sewage. you are the main reason, guys. But still, the fact that we listened to them and brought them into the article actually opened a door to the whole farming community, I think. So that was also one of the lessons we learned. We have to include these people if we want to change the culture. We want to change the mindset. We have to invite them inside the shop. Wouldn't you agree, Asger, on that? That we actually had a very, very, very good discussions with many parts of the agricultural society, and yeah, I think that was positive.
When you realize it's just one big net of fields and farms, which is a really eye opener, and it was for me as well.
Yeah.
Like processing this project for a year totally changed my.
I think that the only country with the biggest agricultural where agriculture fills up a bigger part of the countryside is Bangladesh.
Yeah.
Just to say,
yeah. So it's actually quite interesting just to go on Google and just surf through Europe and different countries to, like, it changes your perspective. Yeah.
Time's up. It says, well, thank you so much, and have a nice conference.